Hello and welcome to the Bravas Luxury Living Podcast. On our podcast, we try and explore ideas and thoughts that help you make sure that luxury home you have is the best possible home you can live in. Now, if you're new to the podcast or if you've been back before, we'd really ask you to like or share or let other people know about this podcast so we can share across the community the content we're generating. I'm always joined on these podcasts with Keith. Hello, Keith. How are you?
Doing great, Nigel.
Keith, in this podcast, we're going to probably go a slightly different way than we've been before. We're going to really look at one of those pieces of technology which, when it works, is invisible, but is something that a client should ask for, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things you don't really think about as being important, but maybe one of the most crucial pieces to the client's overall experience with their home.
Great. Well, let me give him that big warm up. Invite Henry Clifford. Henry, welcome to the podcast. Henry is the founder of Parasol, and we're really going to talk today about Parasol and about remote management of homes. But Henry, before we get into Parasol, why not tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are in the industry?
Sure, great. And thanks so much for having me today and so excited to be with you guys. And my journey is very similar to the Bravas journey in that I grew up in love with electronics and always wanted to own my own business one day. And so I was very fortunate to, at an early age, get an opportunity to start working in technology, putting myself through school and started in the information technology business in the 90s while I was at the University of Maryland and started my first company there. And slowly my projects got bigger and bigger. And about 20 years ago, saw a need for technology in the home. At the time, new construction was booming and went to home builders in our local market. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and said, hey, why aren't we simplifying technology for folks in the home? Why are we having an electrician do all this work? And so I was able to take our consulting model, our professional services model, and take that into the construction world. And at the time, that was a really good moment to really seize that opportunity. But just like anything else in technology, everything changes every year and a half. And so that began a journey of reinvention. Every year and a half, reinventing. And that took us through 2015 or so, where a few of us got together in the industry and said, we don't really like the way we're delivering support to our customers. When they call us, they're home, and when they're home, it's after hours. And so it led to a discussion about how could we deliver support better to our customers, not from our perspective, not from a way that would make us happy, but how could we do it from a way that really worked backwards from the customer being frustrated, the customer being in a position it's 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday, they're going to watch their favorite program, the system doesn't work, and what happens then? And so we
So,
wanted to really,
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to capture that because that was the problem you were trying to solve, wasn't it? And
absolutely,
we
yeah.
hear this all the time. People say, the home theater never breaks at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when there's somebody waiting to do a service call, does it? It always breaks at Saturday evening when you're about to watch the big movie. Was that the specific being able to give clients that solution? Was that the problem that you guys set up to solve?
I think the spark was sort of seeing the same the same frustration dynamic play out over and over again and watching our customers experience systems that were for the most part reliable, but something like service and support isn't about necessarily the times when it's working. It's about being there when it's not working, and it's also about an ongoing relationship. It's about maintenance. Very similar to the way you might hire a lawn care company to come and take care of your yard. Everybody who moves into a new home, which has beautiful sod put down and landscaping and ornamental gardens, they recognize that these things all require watering, caring, feeding, weeding. It's a constant game of playing sort of catch up with these with the garden essentially. And technology is really no different. And so what we saw was an industry reacting, and so we're always then behind the curve. We're talking to a customer in distress. We're talking to somebody who is upset, and now we're having to calm them down candidly and moving to fix them in a scenario where we said, well, what if we didn't have to do that? What if 2 weeks prior that we received a message from the home saying that there was an issue, and we had a team of folks who could go in and proactively fix that system remotely? What then? Would that change the dynamic completely? And so that became the early days of Parasol, where the origins of it again is three integrators. So I have an integration business, very small integration business in Richmond, Virginia, and my two other partners run successful integration businesses, one in Las Vegas, one in West Palm, Florida. And again, we started monitoring each other's customers just to see if this would work. And it turned out that it was great. We overnight knew that we had this great concept. So we fast forward a couple of years later, and we went to market with it. And so it was awesome when you guys decided to go to market and Bravas became a reality.
So it sounds like you're really looking at this problem from two angles, or a solution from two sides. You're looking into the client system to see what's going on as a proactive approach. But then on the reactive side, you're just more available to the client than your average owner operated AV company can be. Is that correct?
Yeah, really, and in the relationship, you nailed it, Keith. There's really two players here, right? We've got the customer, the person sitting there in their family room at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday, and their system doesn't work, and that their pain is universal. Everybody can relate to that frustration with technology. And then there's the pain of the integrator, and this is where outfits like Bravas look inward and say, hey, are we going to do a killer job supporting our customers? Is that really the main thing for us? Or is there somebody out there who's made this their focus and we could partner with them, especially if it were a team of home technology integrators just like us? What then? And so really that became the two-pronged approach that we started sort of really pressing on, because there's really acute pain. Everybody can relate to that frustration around technology not working, and then more importantly, not knowing how to fix it.
Yeah, but let's explore that idea of the technology not working. When if you're a homeowner, what are some of the things that go wrong in a complicated home that someone like, a remote management system might be able to help with? What are we talking about?
Sure, and some of them might surprise you. Common common calls or common issues that we'll see are streaming boxes, things like Roku and Apple TV and some of these others, where they hang up and they just need to be reset. Well, if you have a home where, like a lot of Bravas clients do, where they've got a big rack of gear in the closet, that can be very intimidating for somebody to have to stare down that rack of gear and wonder which do I cut the red wire or the blue wire, right? So there's a common issue. Sound but no picture, picture but no sound. And then oddly enough, we'll get calls in where there's an odd beeping in the home. It might be nothing to do with anything Bravas put in, or any of our other customers, right? But the customer at that point, the beautiful thing there is they can be heard. A lot of these calls will get in. These folks, they just want to be heard, and they want somebody to acknowledge what they're feeling and kind of set the stage for what's next.
I think that was the surprising thing for us when we first started using Parasol as a smaller AV company prior to Bravas was we fully believed that when the client had a problem and they picked up the phone, they wanted to talk to us. If I sold them the system, I was the only person they were willing to talk to. But I didn't always have a solution for them. I was probably with another client or in my truck or, thinking about something else. And they would say, well, I've got in this room, like you said, I've got video, but no audio. And we're sitting there racking our brains trying to think of what it could be while doing five other things. And what was so surprising to us is how quickly and willingly our clients jumped over to talking to a stranger that they'd never met because that guy was completely focused on them, sitting in front of a computer and ready to solve their problem. And taking their sales guy out of the mix just wasn't that painful of a process because what they really wanted, like you said, was to be heard and to find a solution as quickly as possible. And I'm guessing you
Yeah.
guys saw that in your own businesses.
Yeah, and not only that, but you'll see in any group, there's always a normal distribution, right? There's folks who have no problem texting you at 11 o'clock at night with an issue. And then, but that might be the 20%. The 80%, though, they feel bad about it, but at the same time, they're frustrated. Sort of like when you have a bad experience at a restaurant, somebody comes over to the table and says, "How is everything?" And you spent the last 5 minutes berating the restaurant, and you go, "Oh, everything's fine." Uh, when we give permission, right? When Bravas gives permission for the customer to say, "Hey, you know what? Not only do we want to know that when everything's not fine, but we're actually going to monitor your system, and we're going to know that things aren't fine before you do. Oh, and by the way, here's a way for you to text, call, email, chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, all you can eat, and you're going to reach somebody whose job it is to listen to you and take care of you." That's what flipped the script.
Yeah, you're just removing the friction, both the emotional friction and the experience of, well, we're not telling you this is the only way you can get help. It's here's a menu of options. What works best for you? It made me feel maybe less important because no longer was I the single source of controlling their happiness with their system, but it was a very freeing experience. And the feedback we got from clients was incredible. Like they were happier with me because I had helped put that solution in front of them than they were with getting a mediocre answer in a pretty timely fashion, but with me taking personal responsibility for it. In the end, they just wanted, like you said, to be heard and to have their problem solved.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Nigel.
no, I was going to dig in because you said something. I just want to go back to it because I imagine if somebody's listening to this and what they heard was you say, "Well, we can monitor your equipment," so that might have rung some bells with some people. So when we talk about monitoring people's homes, what are we practically talking about here?
Sure, no, that's a great question, and we get that one all the time. When we talk about monitoring, that can be a charged term, right? And what we're talking about is using the best encryption technology, using the best information security that's out there, using a little black box, a little appliance in the home to keep an eye on all of the equipment that's installed in the rack in a typical Bravas customer's home. Where does that information go? It goes to one of two network operations centers in Richmond, Virginia, or Las Vegas, Nevada, all built to, again, align with information security best practices. We don't sell data. We don't monetize data. We don't do anything with the data except take care of the customer. So from our perspective, again, because we started the company by integrators for integrators, we knew that that was going to be one of the first questions that we got asked. And so we wanted to sort of, again, not only address the elephant in the room, but do a really good job of sort of over communicating what steps we take to safeguard customer data.
So let me dig down a bit. We'll come back to the customer data because I think you're right. That's a really important point in this modern world for people. But so let's say you install a fabulous home theater for me, which is full of technical components that sit in a rack. We put a box on that, do we? How do you monitor that? How does from a owner's point of view, how does that actually work?
Sure, no, that's a great question. So the average home now, believe it or not, has something like 47 network connected devices in it. Now, a Bravas customer is going to have more than that, which means that in a world where even your hot pot or your rice cooker could be on the network, if it's on the network, chances are we can see it, we can monitor it. We sort of jokingly reference on our website that we can't monitor a toaster or a wicker basket or a swing set, but realistically, what that gives us is the ability to see whether that device is on or off, whether it's having issues, and then it enables us to power the device on and off, might enable us to see other characteristics that are important for taking care of the system. But in the case of a home theater, the projector is most likely able to be monitored, all of the gear and the rack, even down to the power, even down to the individual power port where you plug the power in. All of that is monitored and controlled in an effort to be a remote set of eyes, ears, and hands. And it is amazing because 80+% of the time, if there's an issue, we're solving it the first time remotely.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest key for us is we thought, yeah, they'll get some of the issues right, but at the very least, that client's going to have a good experience when they make their first phone call, and we'll be able to get good information to our techs so that when they show up on site, they can solve that problem faster. And that part is absolutely true, but we were surprised by how many of those issues could be solved the first time because we were surprised by how small most of those issues were, but how big they appeared to the client. So you mentioned like Apple TVs or Roku's freezing. To us, incredibly simple problem to solve. But to a client who just pushed one button on their remote and their projector fired up and their sound system turned on and the right inputs were selected and the Roku was fired up, they have no idea where in the process that broke down. And that visibility to see those little things and to help them solve these really simple problems that just weren't simple to them, it has been so powerful. And I guess we should also state that like one of the only things you can't see on a network is like we're not monitoring, internet traffic or anything like that. We're literally just looking at how these devices talk to each other and how they talk to the outside world and kind of using that to extrapolate where the issues lie. I mean, is that kind of correct?
Absolutely. I mean, even down to video, like if there's if there's video surveillance or anything sensitive like that in the home, we don't have permission to view any of that stuff unless it's explicitly granted to us. But to your point, Keith, imagine having a car and never taking it to Jiffy Lube versus properly managing the maintenance of that vehicle. It's the same reason why we're able to take care of as much as we can the first time because we're proactively managing it versus having let all these routine maintenance well visits, if you will, go by the wayside. Then we're not in there, dealing with a forest fire.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of our issues are probably as simple as like a fuse in a car. Like your car might have a spare fuse and it might have the little tweezers to get it out. But if you don't know what the problem is, you don't know where to start looking, even if the solution is simple.
I used to work for a guy when I had a previous employer who used to say, "We've come a long way in technology, but 9 out of 10 times when there's a problem, the advice I get is turn it off and turn it on again." And that's my guess is often what will reboot some of this technology for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But imagine again, the difference is if you're a Bravas client staring into into the closet at a rack, turning it off and turning back on is a huge pain point, especially given the customer profile, right? Where oftentimes we'll find with with Bravas clients, right? It's time is their most precious resource. They didn't hire us necessarily because they're interested in how all this stuff goes together. They just want it to work. They wanted a really killer audio, video, network connectivity experience. And to some extent, the way all this stuff goes together is a bit of a black box and can be intimidating for a lot of people. So the peace of mind when they know they have an app where they can reboot things themselves or have our folks do it is tremendous. And because that feeling of frustration, there is just nothing worse for some people.
Yeah, and both you and Keith have said this, but I feel the need to over rotate on this idea slightly around security. That if you know the if you come to Bravas for one of our service offerings and we include the Parasol technology within that, it will allow us to look at the devices in the rack. It doesn't allow us to look into your home. We don't get access to your security cameras. We don't get access to what you're watching on Netflix. That's not, we're really just looking at the devices that have a little widget on them to see whether they're working. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And the best analogy I could use would be imagine somebody had the ability to access that remote diagnostic port on your car. You know, you take it to the auto parts place or wherever, and they stick the little machine in there, and they go, "Oh, I see the problem." But imagine somebody had remote access to that. Again, there's no access to what's going on inside the car, what you're listening to, any of that personalized information. It's only thing we do is we have this sort of Hippocratic oath: do no harm, take care of the customer, and then the only remote access capability we have would be in the service of fixing the system. That's it.
It's funny that you use that car example because I know now there are systems where your car can literally just text you or email you a message when a problem is spotted. And that is such a better experience than noticing a problem, setting an appointment with the dealership, driving to the dealership. Now it's as simple as, a notification on your app says there's a problem. Why don't you go ahead and make an appointment with us by just clicking right here in the app? And I think that is the kind of experience we're trying to deliver. And I love the fact that, um, the best analogy we can use is cars, and we were essentially ahead of automakers in doing
Yeah,
this.
and
Like,
it's funny because Keith, right? Usually we looked at the car leads to home usually because the car is this beautiful kind of closed system where where did remote garage door opener control come in first? Where did lighting control come in first? Where did some heating and cooling control and some of this automation come in first? It was the car. Usually the car leads. In this case, though, I think we had the jump on the auto industry a little bit.
well,
So
we were
you
so
must
focused on experience.
exactly.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
what we can
yeah.
deliver to our clients is experience. Because you're right, the black boxes we sell are the same as every other integrator. In some cases, the same as, uh, the store down the street. But the experience is really the differentiator.
I wonder in all the homes that you guys have managed, whether there are some common things you see that go wrong. That if a homeowner was to say to you, "Okay, Henry, I've got a complicated house. What are the top three things that go wrong in a modern?"
Well, top three. I mean, it's so funny because I could say one, two, and three are usually the network, and the network. But oftentimes we'll be surprised in the hands of the wrong advisor. Somebody who has the budget will not invest properly in the network. Thankfully, Bravas offers killer network solutions. But what I mean by that is if you think of the network in the home like an 8-lane highway, it's really important to install that infrastructure, all 8 lanes from day one. You might only occupy 2 of those lanes when you move in, and that's fine. But you don't want to run out of capacity. You don't want to undersize that network. And it should be designed properly by professionals like folks at Bravas. And by virtue of that, if that network is well designed and well implemented, that's going to take care of 80% of the issues that can go wrong with a poorly designed Wi-Fi system where there are dead spots or where it's not factored in that, oh, you have 4 children. under the age of 10, each with their own iPads, and they want to stream 4K episodes of Doc McStuffins, 24 hours a day, right? So designing it, failing on paper really gets us to the point where that's going to give us a really good network design up front. Also, we talk about first picking who, then picking what. And so, for example, with Bravas, it's a just industry first, never been done before group of best in breed integrators who've all gotten together, the top who's in the entire industry. So that's probably number two is first pick who, then pick what. And the who in this case, I mean, definitely, if you live in a Bravas market, that's where you got to go. And then beyond that, it's not only with the network, but with any project, sort of beginning with the end in mind, as far as what there might be down the road, planning it out. I'm always amazed when people go to think about technology. It's an afterthought. It doesn't get thought about at the beginning at the specifier level where it really should in residential and commercial. But it's interesting when we'll see folks will come in and they will want to put together a design without going through a process of really sounding out the requirements, right? Let's talk about it. How are you going to use this? And coming up with a plan, a proper set of documents that will enable that system to go together. A properly designed system should go together like a set of Legos where there's no guesswork. And if they can fail on paper up front, that is so much less expensive than later on down the road having to undo bad design.
And I guess the other end of that is not only is all those stages important for how is it going to work, what we want to say is it's also important to ask how's it going to be supported and maintained.
Yeah.
And
I
that
think
needs to be designed in up front.
I think one of the biggest things we've seen in the past is a system as a way of just kind of matching someone's budget. You would just say, well, like on the network front, like we're just going to make sure the Wi-Fi is really good for the areas where you're using it most. And then the client would do something like install a gaming system in the corner bedroom in the kids' room that they said they'd never have a gaming system or a TV. And now all of a sudden it's dragging the whole network down. And the great thing is, remotely we can look in and go, hey, I see an Xbox in here that had never been in there before. Can you tell me about that? Oh yeah, we just put it in the corner of our kids' room. Is it wired? No, it's hooked up wireless. But it was just all those little data points we were able to get so that the system could grow over time. But you're like you said, that job basically failed on paper because we didn't plan far enough ahead. But having the remote access and the visibility to it gave us the ability to then fix that problem relatively quickly. And also just use that data to learn where our systems are failing because we can see over and over again and then make sure we're not designing those issues in the future.
Yeah, and the way I see Bravas systems being designed is with 24/7 support in mind, so that no matter what level of support somebody chooses, Bravas is able to just uh, offer that level of support, no problem. It's built in. It's part of who Bravas is. It's a Bravas built system. And again, too much choice is it tends to be a downfall in our industry. We tend to think that our customers are as interested in how many strands of copper are in the speaker wire, when they don't care. They just want it to work. They just want it to sound good. When their friends come over, they want them to say, wow, and that's it. That's our job is to deliver that.
And I think that's exactly right. And I think that our relationship with Parasol at Bravas is designed to really ensure that wow is there when you need it, and when it's not, we can quickly jump into it. You guys are critical to, I think, what we're doing in our support services. And while some of our customers may not see your name, I think it's important they understand the smarts and the technology behind it. But so we're really grateful for that, for those insights. But before we let you go, we do our 3-question game with everybody, and you should not escape. When you talk about choices, we're going to make you make some choices now. And so the first of our three questions we ask everybody is there a piece of home automation technology that you have in your home that you think, wow, I couldn't live without that?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. You know, the lighting control system. The lighting control system in my home is something you would have to pry from my cold dead fingers. I'm a dad, and kids leave lights on, but not in a home with a lighting control system. They don't. And so I haven't touched a light switch in a long time, and having all of the lights on a schedule in the home is just so peaceful as a dad. And and there's so many ways, by the way, so many ways people love lighting control, but that's why I love lighting control.
Excellent. So the second question is, can you think of a job you guys have done as Parasol, which is your wow job, or one where, or a story you can think of where you go, this really was the best example of what we do?
A lot of them have to do with the peace of mind that we'll deliver for clients, but we've helped some clients out of some pretty hairy situations, and they come back through in these notes that we'll get from folks who expressed appreciation. But I can remember one night we received a call from a customer who was unable to see her cameras. She was afraid somebody was outside the home, and she couldn't see the camera. She was in her master bedroom, very concerned. Our folks were able to quickly, remotely access the network gear, reboot the system, get the cameras back up. She was able to see it was like a deer or something outside, and she was just elated. But you could just hear the anxiety, and it was. It's just great to be able to help people out.
That's great. And so the last question we ask is there a piece of technology that hasn't been invented yet that you would really like to see invented?
I hesitate on the cloning machine, but the replicator from Star Trek: The Next Generation would be kind of cool. Or just the whole holodeck replication thing, the Jean-Luc Picard sort of tea, Earl Grey, hot. I
I
just think that would be kind of neat.
actually no, I think you're the first person to suggest that. Now you say that, that seems to me the obvious answer to the question.
I mean, if you just, it's like having a genie, right? You just ask for it, and there it is.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you very much for those great answers. Parasol and that technology is really important to what we do at Bravas. So thank you very much for joining us. And if we hear questions or if more stuff, maybe we'll ask you to come back again.
Well, Keith, Nigel, thank you so much. And we're so grateful for the partnership with Bravas.